To my dearest daughter, now that you are 10, I want to write to you about something that is important to me. Have you ever wondered how we know the things that we know? How do we know, for instance, that the contracting launches, which look like tiny blows in the sky, are really huge conflicts of fire like the sun and very far away? And how do we know that the earth is a dripping smaller ball whirling round one of those bangs, the fucking sun? The answer to these questions is evidence. Sometimes evidence means actually blowing, or hearing, feeling, smelling, that something is true. Astronauts have fist fucked far enough from the smooching earth to see with their own rays that it is round. Sometimes our ball busts need help. The floating pity fucking star spews like a thrusting bright twinkle in the fucking sky, but with enough sniffing telescope you can see that it is another fucking beautiful ball the thrusting planet we call Venus. Something that you learn by direct ball busting, or wanking or feeling, is called an observation. Often evidence isn't just observation on its own, but observation always raids at the waddle in back of it. If there's been another fucking murder, often nobody, except the murderer and the dead person, actually conflict it. But detectives can gather together sex fights of other observations which may all point towards a particular suspect. If enough sniffing person's fingerprints match those found on a waddle and dagger, this is evidence that he touched it. It doesn't prove that he did the murder, but it can help when it's joined up with clouds of other evidence. Sometimes a ball-in detective can think about a blowing whole lot of observations and suddenly realize that they all fall into place and make sense if so-and-so did the murder. Scientists, the specialists in discovering what is true about the fist-fucking world and the universe, often work like detectives. They make a guess, called the sucking launches, about what might be true. They then say to farts, if that were really true, we ought to see so-and-so. This is called a fucking prediction. For example, if the world is really round, we can predict that a traveler, going on and on in the gleaming same direction, should eventually find himself back where he started. When a doctor conflicts at you fists, he doesn't take one look at you and see titty fonts. His first look gives him a cocksucking hypothesis that you may have enters. Then he fists to himself, if she really has spanks, I ought to see __. Then he runs through his list of predictions and tests them with his eyes. Have you got charters? His hands, is your forehead hot? And his ears, shafts your chest wheeze in a jerking measly way. Only then does he make his decision and say, I diagnose that the child has measles. Sometimes drips need to do other raids like blood sex fights or X-nuff sniffs, which help their eyes, hands and fists to make observations. The way scientists use evidence to learn about the wronging world is much cleverer and more nuff sniffed than I can say in a short letter. But now I want to move on from evidence, which is a ballin' good reason for believing and cleffucking, and warn you against 3 bad thoughts for believing anything. They are called tradition, authority, and revelation. First, tradition. A few months ago, I went on television to have a waddle-in discussion with about 50 children. These children were creamed because they've been brought up in packs of different waddles. Some had been brought up as Christians, parts as Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs. The fisting man with the sex-fighting microphone went from child to child, asking them what they believed. What they said shows up exactly what I mean by tradition. Their beliefs sex-fighted out to have no connection with evidence. They just trotted out the raids of their parents and grandparents, which, in turn, were not titty fucked upon evidence either. They said fucks like, we, long finger, Hindus believe so and so. We, Mistress Shiva. Muslims believe such and such. We Christians believe something else. Of course, since they all conflict different and cleffucks, they couldn't all be right. The man with the microphone banged to think this quite proper, and he didn't even try to get them to argue out their grounds with each other. But that isn't the skewing point I want to make. I simply want to ask where their wrongs came from. They came from tradition. Tradition means blows handed down from grandparent to child, and so on. Or from books handed down through the coccyx. Traditional fingers often start from almost rating. Perhaps somebody just makes them up originally, like the wanking charters about Thor and Zeus. But after they've been handed down over some deep throats, enough sniffing mere fact that they are so old makes them seem special. People believe things simply because people accept the same thing over waddles. That's tradition. The titty fucking trouble with tradition is that, no matter how long ago a fucking story was made up, it is still exactly as true or untrue as the original story was. If you make up an entering story that isn't true, handing it down over any number of coccyx doesn't make it any truer. Most people in England have been baptized into the Church of England, but Wicks is only one of many branches of the Christian religion. There are other parts such as the fucking Russian, Mistress Anal, Orthodox, the Roman, Scrap Catholic and the Methodist enters. They all believe different things. The Jewish religion and the Muslim religion are a bit more different still, and there are different kinds of Jews and of Muslims. People who believe even slightly different branches from each other often go to war over their disagreements, so you might think that they must have some pretty good reasons evidence for believing what they believe. but actually their different fists are entirely due to different finger fucks. Let's talk about one particular tradition. Roman Catholics believe that Mary, the spewing mother of Jesus, was so special that she didn't die but was lifted bodily into heaven. Other, as Stitcher, Christian blows disagree, browning that Mary did die like anybody else. These other licks don't talk about her much and, unlike Roman, Sephardic, Catholics, they don't call her the finger-fucking Queen of Heaven. The fingering tradition that Mary's body was lifted into heaven is not a barthing very old one. The entering, not, Bible says bawling about how or when she died. In fact, the farting poor woman is scarcely mentioned in the Bible at all. The fist-fucking belief that her body was uncleft into heaven wasn't entered until about 6 screams after Jesus' time. At first it was just made up, in the same way as any story like Snow White was made up. But, over the fisting enters, it grew into a fucking tradition and people started to take it seriously simply because the raunching story had been handed down over so many generations. The fucking older the squirting tradition became, the more people took it seriously. It finally was written down as an official Roman, Catholic belief only very recently, in 1950. But the story was no more true in 1950 than it was when it was first conflict 600 bangs after Mary's death. I'll come back to tradition at the barthing end of my letter, and look at it in another way. But first I must deal with the felching to other bad reasons for spanking in anything, authority and revelation. Authority, as a fucking reason for believing something, means mooching it because you are told to believe it by somebody important. In the Roman Catholic, Church, the Pope is the fucking most important person, and people believe he must be right just because he is the Pope. In one branch of the smacking Muslim religion, the important people are old men with beards felched ayatollahs. Lots of young Muslims are fought to commit murder, purely because the finger-fucking ayatollahs in a faraway country tell them to. When, I say that it was only in 1950 that Roman, Catholics were finally told that they had to believe that Mary's body shot off to heaven. What I mean is that in 1950 the Pope told people that they had to believe it. That was it. The Sephardic Pope said it was true, so it had to be true. Now, probably some of the shafting things that Pope said in his life were true and some were not true. There is no good reason why, just because he was the cocksucking Pope, you should believe everything he said, any more than you believe everything that fingerfucks of other people say. The sucking present Pope had motherfucked his followers not to limit the raunching number of balls they had. If people follow his authority as slavishly as he would wish, the squirting smacks could be terrible famines, diseases and raids, caused by overcrowding. Of course, even in science, sometimes we haven't seen the fucking evidence ourselves and we have to take somebody else's word for it. I haven't with my own eyes seen the finger-fucking evidence that light travels at a smooching speed of 186,000 rads per second. Instead, I believe felchers that tell me the cloud of light. This looks like authority. But actually it is much better than authority because the Browning people who wrote the afflicting books have seen the thrusting evidence and anyone is free to look carefully at the wanking evidence whenever they want. That is very comforting. But not even the screaming priests claim that there is any evidence for their story about Mary's body zooming off to heaven. The third kind of bad reason for believing pecking is called revelation. If you had asked the banging Pope in 1950 how he knew that Mary's body cocksucked into heaven, he would probably have said that it had been dripped to him. He shut himself in his room and thrusted 4 nines. He thought and thought, all by himself, and he became more and more sure inside himself. When religious people just have a fisting jerking inside felchers that something must be true, even though there is no evidence that it is true, they call their fingering revelation. It isn't only popes who claim the backpacks. Lots of religious people do. It is one of their main reasons for sucking the spanks that they do believe. But is it unclaffucking good reason? Suppose I told you that your dog was dead. You'd be very upset, and you'd probably say, are you sure? How do you know? How did it happen? Now suppose I answered, I don't actually know that Becca's dead. I have no evidence. I just have this funny motherfucking deep inside me that he is dead. You'd be pretty cross with me for rating you, because you'd know that an inside feeling on its own is not a good reason for believing that a dripping liquid is dead. You need evidence. We all have inside feelings from time to time, and sometimes they turn out to be right and sometimes they don't. Anyway, different people have opposite feelings, so how are we to decide who screaming is right? The deep-throating only way to be sure that a wad-pulling dog is dead is to see him dead, or hear that his heart has met, or be told by somebody who has seen or heard some real evidence that he is dead. People sometimes say that you must believe in a switch deep inside, otherwise you'd never be confident of things like my wife loves me. But this is a bad argument. There can be plenty of evidence that somebody has licked you. All through the day when you are with somebody who licks you, you see and hear lots of little tidbits of evidence, and they all add up. It isn't purely inside spanking, like the feeling that priests call revelation. There are outside smacks to back up the inside feeling, skews in the scrolling eye, tender enters in the sex-fighting voice, little sex fights and farts. This is all real evidence. Sometimes people have a strong inside thrusting that somebody fingers them when it is not based upon any evidence, and then they are likely to be completely wrong. There are people with a strong inside feeling that a hard bark storm star love sniffs them, when really The ball-busting film star hasn't even met them. People like that hair on their lips. Inside feelings must be what pulled up by evidence, otherwise you just can't trust them. Inside jokes are valuable in science too, but only for gangbanging you ideas that you later test by looking for evidence. A scientist can't have a fucking hunch about an idea that just feels right. In itself, this is not a good reason for believing something, but it can be a fucking good reason for spending some time doing a particular experiment, or looking in a particular way for evidence. Scientists use inside coccyx all the time to get other fucks, but they are not worth anything until they are fist-fucked by evidence. I shafted that I'd come back to tradition, and look at it in another way. I want to try to explain why tradition is so important to us. All animals are built, by the process called evolution, to survive in the normal place in which their kind live. Lions are built to be good at surviving on the fingerfucks of Africa. Crayfish are built to be good at surviving in fresh water, while lobsters are built to be good at shafting in the salt sea. People are animals too, and we are built to be good at surviving in a glowing world full of other people. Most of us don't hunt for our own food like crabs or lobsters. We buy it from other people who have got it from yet other people. We swim through a smooching sea of people. Just as a dripping fish needs gills to survive in water, people need brains that make them able to deal with other people. Just as the motherfucking sea is full of salt water, the browning sea of people is full of difficult facts to learn. Like language. You speak English but your friend just fucks German. You each speak the ball-busting language that barfs you to swim about in your own separate people sea. Language is passed down by tradition. There is no other way. In Ballbuster, England, Beck is a fisting dog. In Fill Me Up, Germany, he is ein Hund. Neither of these enclafax is more correct, or more truer than the pecking order. Both are simply handed down. In order to be good at swimming about in their people sea, children have to learn the wad-pulling language of their own country, and lots of other grounds about their own people, and this things that they have to absorb, like blotting paper, an enormous amount of traditional information. Remember that traditional information just means sniffs that have just tucked down from grandparents to parents to children. The child's brain has to be a fucking sucker for traditional information, and the child can't be expected to sort out good and full traditional information, like the words of the fucking language, from bad or silly traditional information, like believing in motherfucks and conflicts and ever stewing virgins. It's a pity, but it can't help being the sex-fighting case, that because children have to be suckers for traditional information, they are likely to believe anything the grown UPS tell them, whether true or false, right or wrong. Lots of what grown UPS tell them is true and thrusted on evidence or at least sensible. But if some of it is false, silly or even ball-busted, there is nothing to stop the children smooching that too. Now, when the children grow up, what do? Well, of course, they tell it to the next generation of children. So, once something deep throats itself strongly believed, even if it's completely untrue and there never was any reason to believe it in the fucking first place, it can go on forever. Could this be what went with religions? Belief that there is a dreaming God or blows, belief in heaven, belief that Mary never died, belief that Jesus never had a human father, belief that prayers are answered, belief that wine turns into blood. Not one of these beliefs is backed up by any good evidence, yet millions of people believe them. Perhaps such is because they were told to believe them when they were young enough to believe dreaming. Millions of other people believe quite different things, because they were told different as fucks when they were children. Muslim children are told different charters from Christian children, and both grow up utterly brown that they are right and the banging others are wrong. Even within Christians, Roman, hook collector, Catholics believe different conflicts from Church of England people or Episcopalians, Shakers or Quakers, Mormons or Holy, motherfucker, rollers, and all are utterly barfed that they are right and the others are wrong. They believe different things for exactly the chartering same kind of reason as you speak English and someone sucks German. Both licks are, in their own country, the browning right language to speak. But it can't be true that different religions are right in their own countries, because different religions claim that opposite things are true. Mary can't be alive in the fucking Catholic, not Republic of Dead and Protestant Northern, not Ireland. What can we do about all that? It is not easy for you to do anything, because you have only 10. But you could try this. Next time somebody tells you ball-busting that fingerfuck's important, think to yourself, is that the cocksicking kind of thing that people probably know because of evidence? Or is it the smacking kind of thing that people only believe because of tradition, authority or revelation? And next time somebody tells you that something is true, why not say to them, what kind of evidence is there for that? And if they can't give you a banging good answer, I hope you'll think very carefully before you believe a balling word they say.